Hello and welcome. I'm going to straight go into the product. So it's going to check if the product has got the value, it's going to map through, and it's going to pass the product ID and the product data. So this is the component, another component over here. So this component is basically going to get the product data, and then so currently I'm not taking care of the group product. I'll probably do that later, but for rest of the product I've taken care of it. So I'm just looping through it. Product name, so here you get the name, then you have the product slug. Okay, so when you actually click on this product, like for example this one, so it's going to go ahead and take you. So now you can see that you've got the slug of the product that it's going to, and that's what we're doing in the link over here, right? To the product slug, and then we're getting the image, source URL, all of that stuff. So that's behind on the home page. Okay, and then you've got the product price being displayed. So let me just show you. So then the product price is being displayed. Okay, and then finally we have the add to cart button. So let me explain to you what's going on over here. This is another component that we're using. We don't want to make our code really dirty by doing everything in one component. That's why we're breaking it into pieces so it's easy for us to even debug in future, right? So add to cart button. Let's see what's going on over here. So you're going to pass the product basically. So now I'm going to go to this add to cart button. So let's see what's going on over here. So we have add to cart, and this is going to get the product in the props. And then what we're doing over here is that we are going to use the app context that we created, and remember that we had set the initial value of the cart and set cart function, which actually sets the value of cart. So we are pulling that out from the app context. Then we are using the use state to set these values, which is show view cart, request error, just to handle the error and toggle between show view cart or not. So there's a button over here when you do add to cart, then it opens up, it shows the view cart. So that's just to handle that. Now, if you remember earlier, we were handling the add to cart with the help of the JavaScript function that we had written, and then so we were using the JavaScript function that we had written, which was this one, like update cart and add first product. So all of this JavaScript function that we had written. But the WooCommerce WP GraphQL WooCommerce already has this feature that it can handle all of that on its own. Okay, so it maintains a session on the WordPress server where your WordPress site is, and it goes ahead and does all of the heavy lifting for you, which means it does add to cart, calculates how many items are in cart, and there are GraphQL queries available to update cart as well. So you don't really need to create your own JavaScript function for that. Now you must be wondering, why did we even spend time into writing our own functions to create cart? So let me tell you, there are two reasons for this. Number one, we are not building this project for a particular client, right? This is for your learning. This is for you to understand how things are done. So the first important thing is that if you are building cart yourself in future, I know that this plugin is going to do the work for you, but if you want to do it yourself, then how do you actually do it? So you get to learn how you could actually build the cart yourself just with native JavaScript. So that's what I taught you in previous videos, right? There could be scenarios wherein you have you don't have a decoupled architecture. You have your WooCommerce. You just have your e-commerce in Node.js, okay, and you are taking care of end-to-end solution just as one project without having to be dependent on WP GraphQL plugin, because that's your project. You have to take care of all of the cart, handling, etc. So that will be very useful because you learned something new here. Okay. Second is that if in future, if you plan to make this store offline, so in Next.js, you have something called Next Offline. You also have a workbox that you can explore. And with the help of that, you can actually convert your application into a PWA, which means that it's going to work offline. Now, this cart that we are handling over here, the add to cart functionality is dependent on the request that is made to server, which means this feature is not going to work offline. So for that, whatever we built so far is going to be used when we actually created the functions for add to cart with the native JavaScript, because that is being handled, and we are storing the data into local storage when we are adding to the cart, and local storage would work offline. So that is going to come in handy if at all you plan to make this WooCommerce site offline, and that's going to be useful to you. But if you don't plan to, then probably you can just go ahead and delete this piece of code. I've just kept it here for your reference, or in future, just in case if you get time, and if I plan to show you how the offline feature works, then probably we can use this. So I'll just explain to you how would that work. So what would happen is that when we do add to cart and when we are offline, we are going to use our native JavaScript and push the item into the local storage, and whenever it comes back offline, we are going to sync it with the server. Okay, so we're going to again send a request to the server just to ensure that our local cart, which was offline, is in sync with the one on the server. Okay, awesome. But for now, let's continue with this. All right, okay, so what's happening over here? So this query is basically going to get the cart data. Okay, so so this is the get cart query. So if you check over here, this is the query. You get cart, contents, node, keys, all of that stuff over here, right? Okay, so all of this data you can check. And how can I play around with this? Well, you can go over here in graphical. So there's a WP graphical plugin that you can install. So you can run your query over here. So first we're going to do add to cart. Just putting the mutation of add to cart I've already written, and you're going to pass the query variables over here, submit it, and there you go. You've got all of the data in the cart now. The cart is been added. You've got all of the total information. Okay, so let's add one more item like so, and now you can see the quantity is increased to 2, and this is the price. Let's add one more product, let's say with a product ID of 28. Okay, you can see this has been added as well. And now we want to get the data for the cart. So for that we have another query available, and that query is called get cart. Okay, you don't need to pass anything because it's not a mutation. And now if you check it, there you go. You can see that now you have all of the cart data. So you have product ID, you've got quantity as 2, you've got total, right, and you've got subtotal, right, and this is the other product that we added. So all of the information is here. Okay, so WP GraphQL WooCommerce plugin is taking care of all of that, maintaining a session for the cart, and that is what is going to keep track of what is there in the cart, if it got cleared or not, or if it got processed or not. Okay, so that's what we are doing over here. So this is the query to get cart. Okay, and that's right here. So we have useQuery, and we can get that from Apollo React hooks. So Apollo React hooks has a method called useQuery that allows us to do the query. Okay, so inside of this it asks us to pass different parameters. We can have loading. So while the query is being made until it gets resolved, loading will be true and false otherwise. This will have error in case if we get any errors when we do the query. This will have the data, and then you also have a function called refetch. So if you call this function, then query will be made again. Okay, then this you can do notify on network status change. You can set that to true. Okay, so you'll be notified if the network status changes. You also have a function called all on completed. So basically it takes the first parameter as the query, which we have written on top, and the second parameter is an object where you can pass different options. Okay, so in the second option I've passed a method called on completed. So it allows you to pass a method called on completed, and it's a callback function. So what happens is that once the query is complete, then this function will be called. So whatever you want to do at this point, once the query is resolved, you can do that here. Okay. So what we're doing over here is that this function, the job of this function is basically just to get us the data in the format that we want. So I have written this function. This is my custom function. Is going to take the cart, is going to check if the cart has the value or not. Okay, and then it's just going to take an empty object and push all of the product data, do all of the calculation of the price and everything what's required, and just return that particular object in the format that we need. Okay, so it's going to give me the cart value, and what we're going to do is once we have the data, once this function is called, it's also going to update our local storage WooNextCart with this updated cart information by stringifying it. So if you remember, you go over here and you go to applications. Currently you can see that WooNextCart is null, but when we do add to cart, it's going to go ahead and get the data from the query, and then it's going to set the value of the cart over here. Okay, awesome. And again, it's going to call the setCart function. Remember we had created this function in the app context, right here, and the job of the setCart function is to set the value of the cart. In React we have useState, right? You're already aware of it. So this is just going to set the value of the cart. So basically this context is going to be available across all of the components. So it's kind of a global store that we have, and it's just going to set the value of that here. Oops, where it's gone. Okay. Oops. Yep. So it's going to set the value on the global context store, so any component can grab it. The reason why we are doing this is because we need to maintain add to cart over here, right? So let me just show that to you. So if I do add to cart here, so notice that WooNextCart is got all of the product, and that's what's happening over here. We're basically getting the cart value. Okay. Okay. Let me explain this part once again. I'll come back to this. Okay. So this is add to cart mutation, right? So remember we did the add to cart mutation. I showed it to you over here. We had add to cart mutation. So we have written this. We have a method called useMutation available in Apollo React hooks. So on top, yep, we are pulling this from Apollo React hooks. This is useMutation, right? So useMutation takes the query, whatever mutation query you want. So we have created an add to cart mutation right here. It takes input, okay, and of the type add to cart input, and then this is my mutation query which is add to cart, and then you pass the input variable here, and then in return it's going to give you all of this data. Okay, this data you can ask for more or less depending on what you want, but all of that information can be found here on the left hand side. So when you put the query here on the left hand side, you can know what all you want and what all you want to remove actually. Okay, so again, this is going to give you all of the data here, quantity, total, subtotal, all of that stuff, right? And then yep, so and the second parameter will be an object. It will allow you to pass different variables. So in variables, whatever the product quantity input and all of that information is there is going to be passed. So what is this information? Let me show that to you. So this over here is going to ask for the client mutation ID. So remember that when we did a query, we wanted the product ID to be sent and then a client mutation ID. So this client mutation ID is going to be unique. So we have a package called v4, and we are pulling that from a npm package called uuid. So this generates a unique ID for us. Okay, so this is going to keep track of or cart. That's why we need the unique ID for that. Okay, because there could be multiple people adding to cart from their own browser. So it's important that we keep the query ID, client ID unique. Okay, so coming back, where is it gone? Yep, here it is. So the client mutation ID and the product ID. Okay, so we're going to get that from the product, because remember in add to cart we were passing the product data, so we get the product ID from there. Okay, once we have that, we just pass that as input to our query. So if you remember in the add to cart query, right here, we are passing this data as input. So we are inside of input, it's an object which is going to be including your property key value pairs like client mutation ID as well as your product ID. Okay. And then the next parameter you can pass is on completed, again like the like we had the get cart use query. In similar way, we have the on completed method available for the use mutation as well. So once the query is completed, this function is going to be called. So here what we're doing is, if there's any check, then remember we had created a use state, initial state right here. So this is going to handle any request errors if we get. Okay, so coming back, so if there's any error, then it's just going to set that error. Okay, so generally error resides in the whatever the object is dot GraphQL errors first item and dot message. Okay, and then on success, there are two things we're going to do, because when you do add to cart, you not only need to go ahead and set the value of the cart in your context API, but also you need to refetch the cart value. Only then sorry, what you need to do is basically refetch or get cart, right? Because when you go ahead and do add to cart, definitely it will be added to cart on the WordPress server. However, you want your application to be updated with the new value after adding the items to the cart. So that is why we are calling the refetch function. And what is this refetch function? So this refetch function, I just explained to you a while ago that in my useQuery get cart, we have this function available, which means if you call this function, then this query is going to be performed again and you will get the data. So that's what we're doing over here. We're saying that after you've completed this work of adding to the cart, what you do is you call the use query again, which is execute this get cart query and get the products that are available in the cart now after adding to the cart. Okay, and again on completed, this is going to set the new value into the cart, right? So that's what's happening over here. And also it's going to set show view cart to true. So again, this is our we have said that we have initialized it just to maintain the this visibility of the view cart button. Okay, so again, let me show you. If I do this, let's take example of this add to cart. So we did this adding to cart, and now you can see the total quantity is increased to 2. The product total product price is gone to 21, and it's actually updated the cart. So what's happening is that when you actually hit it, let me show you here. Let's take another example of the product. Let's take this one. So when you did add cart, you can see that there is a query that's been made. So check headers, and notice that the request is always being made to just one endpoint, which is /GraphQL. Okay, the first part right here, consider this as your WordPress site URL. Okay, and it'll be always at WordPress site URL /GraphQL. Okay, so this is the request that we are making, and in response, what we get is the data, which is add to cart data. You get the cart item key, you get the product ID, so you get product details, quantity, total, subtotal, all of that stuff, right, as a response. And then this is the second query that we are making, again to the same endpoint. So after the add to cart, so this was the add to cart, and it returned some data to us. And the second one, this was get cart. Why? Because we are saying that after the add to cart is done, call the refetch. What will refetch do? Well, refetch will again execute this get cart query, and on completion of it, it's going to update the cart in the local storage as well as in the React context, which is a global store. Okay, so you can see in return it gives us the cart data. So you get content of that, you get shipping, fee, discount, all of that stuff, right? So you can see that you get product data, right? So basically, it's doing all of the heavy lifting for you. It's calculating and everything, all of that stuff. Perfect. So that's what's happening over here. I hope this is clear to you, all right? So I hope you did like the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and do share my video with others, and do subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. And so do follow me on GitHub over here. That's my GitHub ID, imranhsayed, and that's my Twitter ID as well. And just go to the repository, which is Woo Next, and you're going to get all of the latest codes over here in the master branch. If you want to see what has changed, you can come to pull request, check the closed one. Now remember, if you notice over here, I have created this PR, right? So this is the PR that I've created. It has explained what has changed, what are the different updates that I've made to the cart. So it gives you all of that information here, and you can always come back and check the file change as to what all the things that I've changed over here. Okay, so that's going to be helpful always when you are looking at different videos, because this WP-GraphQL WooCommerce plugin is constantly updating to make improvements for the betterment. So whenever there's a change, generally I go ahead and make updates like I did for the ad support version 0.5.0. So I added the support for that, and I also explained over here as to what has changed. Okay, so you can see it talks about what are the major updates. Like for example, the product by query is deprecated and is replaced by product. Okay, so the query name is changed to just product instead of product by for fetching single product data. Awesome. This is just for your information, but all of the latest codes, the working code, will be available in the master branch. All right. So I hope you did like the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up and do subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. And do follow me on Twitter. My Twitter ID is CodyTech. Okay, so this is the Twitter ID. Awesome. Perfect. So I'll see you in the next video. Take care.